Yeah. Okay, you guys. Hi. I
Hello.
think we're live here, everybody. This is Linda Marcus Smith, your girl, doing another interview. And usually, guys, I go on forever with people on here. I know you put up with 5.5 hours of Tommy Chong and et cetera, et cetera. Today, you get a snippet of an interview. This is my first time having on Mark Dysinger. He's over there in the other square. Hi, Mark.
Hello, how are you?
Hi. So, Mark is on here because I'm interviewing people that are on different festivals as of late. It makes it fun for me, your girl over here in Vegas, getting to meet people all over the country. The whole reason I do this, you guys, is so you at home can get to know comedians, who they are off stage, so you can see if you want to go see them on stage, support them on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. You know the drill. The more numbers we have, the more we get booked. So, this is your opportunity to get to know comedians one after another, who they really are when they're not on stage trying to be something. Here, they're just going to, you get to see what kind of shelves and windows he has in his apartment. What does he drink? Why does he look like an airline pilot? We're going to get into all of that and more in 15 to 20 minutes because that's what we do here. Okay, so let's bring on my guest so you get to know him. Like I hinted about a second ago, his name is Mark Dysinger. Now, I am not a snoop. I don't go snooping and finding out things and trying to trick people into telling me things they didn't know they were going to say. I'm not that kind of girl. I'm just a down home girl doing an interview. I'm not a snoop. So let's get to know him since we don't know him. Bring him on stage right now. The one and only Mark Dysinger. Now there could be others, but this is the only one you need to know. Right over there. Mark Dysinger. Yay!
Yay. Thank you for having
Mark.
me. Thank you for having me. This is great. What a unique concept you have going here, reaching out to all the performers. Just to follow up, there are at least three other Mark Dysingers that I know of in the United States, but none of them are doing what I do. So thanks for having me. And as far as looking like an airline pilot, I need my headphones because my computer audio without them is actually pretty lousy. You would not be able to understand me, but thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here, Mark Dysinger. Tell us where you live, what city.
I live in a town called Killingworth. It's on the coast of Connecticut.
Wow.
It was incorporated back in colonial times in the 1650s or so. It's a very, very old town, like many are here in Connecticut. Lots of history. It's a small town. We're in the country, kind of, but we're only 6 miles north of Interstate 95. So I'm only about 90 minutes away from New York City if I wanted to be there. I'm only about 2 hours away from Boston. So I'm kind of in a small town right between those two metropolises.
Wonderful. Well, I'm going to be in New York City very soon. I can't say when because it's a surprise,
Uh-oh.
but soon I will be there. You will hear about it on my Facebook. I love New York City. And so you're in between, did you say Philly and New York?
In between New York City and Boston.
Boston.
And
Okay,
just about half an hour south of Hartford. So there are big cities and venues nearby. Yes, certainly.
great. So let's step away from comedy for a second. We'll
hmm
get to that in a minute.
hmm
Who are you off stage?
Actually, my primary source of income is I'm a research scientist, believe it or not. Yeah, I have a master's degree in biotechnology. I mean, some people when they hear that after they see me do comedy, they say, "Well, of course you're a scientist of some sort, the way you keep things organized in your brain." And some people are just genuinely shocked they don't see it coming. So what I do is, I work at a division of AstraZeneca that develops therapies for people who live with rare disease. So it's extremely fulfilling. I have direct reports. I do lots of talking, lots of strategy in meetings. lots of mentoring. I do have, scientific publications out there. And I have done dozens of external presentations at corporate events and things like that. So I stay very, very busy. And the comedy part of it is an interesting outlet because I'm not going to say necessarily that it's therapy, but it's so far removed from what I do in my day job that it's sort of the yin and yang, like that helps keep some of the balance in my life. So work is very fulfilling for me, and it's never the same thing 2 days in a row.
Wow. Okay, so AstraZeneca, I have to ask the question, have you ever met Montel Williams?
No, I have not. I have not met Montel. Nope.
Because he
Nope.
does those AstraZeneca. Well, he used to. I don't know if he still does, but he did.
hmm
He
hmm
used to
No,
plug that.
yeah. I ha haven't had the pleasure. I did spend 8 years at Pfizer, so when I see Frida Lewis Hall when she used to do her guest spots in the Dr. Phil show, that was I don't know her on a personal level. I knew who she was, and one of my guilty pleasures during COVID, while I was able to work from home, was I would have Dr. Phil reruns on in the background. And, I know it's entertainment and everything, but he always had some colloquialisms that have kind of stuck with me, like how flat you make a pancake, it has two sides. And I think my favorite one, and this really resonated with me, was this is a Dr. Phil quote. I'm going to paraphrase, but he says, people would not care so much what other people thought about them if they realized how rarely other people thought about them. Isn't that great?
Yeah,
We worry so much about how other people see us, and I think that's part of what being a comedian is. We don't care what other people think. It's our opportunity to express ourselves. So, if I cared what other people thought about me on that level, I wouldn't do comedy. It's as simple as that. So he was a bit of a guilty pleasure for a few years during COVID, and actually landed a couple good points here and there, and then sometimes he'd have a psychic come on his show. I'm like, okay, you're not a doctor if you're having a psychic come on your show. So should have seen that one coming. So
well, speaking of the art of comedy, a lot of comedians are very overly concerned what people think of them deep down, and they
hmm
try to act like they're not concerned. But I've got a
hmm
coach in New York City, you might have heard of her, Gladys Simon.
yes,
So whenever you screw up on stage in front of her, you can feel really like a schmuck.
hmm
And she says, "Ah, get over yourself. Nobody gives a shit. They're not going to
yeah,
remember."
yeah. You are your own worst critic. You are. And one thing there's a book I read some years ago. It was sort of like, getting started in comedy. And part of it was about writing jokes, but the other part of it was the mental approach to it. And one thing that I have subscribed to and stayed with is where you create your comedy, where you capture things, and where you record them. And you should not practice or perform in the same space that you create. Because if you do it in the same space, when you practice, there is self-judgment and self-evaluation. And if you let that creep into your space where you create, you may limit yourself with self-judgment and start limiting yourself. So he means like actual physical separation. So I'm on my computer right now in my den here, and I do a lot of creating right here. Most of the time when I practice my stuff, it's when I'm driving to work in the car. I have free time. I just ramble to myself. The other people on the road probably think that I'm, schizophrenic or something. I'm actually running through a routine or something, or I'm verbally just stream of consciousness expanding on a point of something that I think have potential. That way, if I don't like it in that space, that feeling of judgment doesn't come and limit me here at the computer where I do a lot of my creating. And it sounded kind of hokey to me at first, Linda, but I have to tell you, after a couple years of doing that, there are no limitations on my creativity, and I can be as judgmental as myself as I want to. But you know what? To your earlier point about people not caring, usually if I'm critical about something and don't think it's funny, it is funny. It's just not funny to me because there still is some, everyone has a little doubt when they're creating. So I think these separate space idea, I think there's a lot of validity to it, at least in my experience. That has really stuck with me.
Absolutely. So I sit here and I create here, and I can only create here in my creative vacuum. There's
Mm-hmm.
limits to my
Mm-hmm.
creativity in my creative space, evidently, because Landry, the comedian, used to live 2 doors away from me in my apartment. And Landry said, he says, what I do is I go for a walk every day and I say my stuff out loud and give yourself space to add other stuff. And I started doing that, going for a walk on a sunny day, on a rainy day, and just saying my material. And some of my best punchlines have come when I'm not in this space.
Yeah. Yeah.
Crazy.
Because you're having the freedom to just let it ride.
Mhm.
You are. You're having the freedom to just let it ride. And I think that's extremely important. And when it comes to material, when it comes to coming up with ideas, for me personally, initially, nothing is off the table. I won't immediately say no to anything. There are many things I write down. Um, Later I come back to them and I think, yeah, that's not going to work out. But I don't want to miss an opportunity. If even only 1% of what I would throw out winds up being something good, I don't want to dismiss it outright from the very beginning. And I write down bullet points. I don't write down text. As you know, if you memorize text when you're on stage, you're going to look like someone who's reciting text. It'd be like someone who's doing a PowerPoint presentation. They're turning around, they're reading the PowerPoint slide to you. You know what I mean? It just there's a huge disconnect there. And I am not a joke writer per se. I tell stories. People say, Mark, where do you get your material? And I say, I just pay attention to the world. There is so much happening in this world, whether it's political or religious or in my own personal life, or my daughter says something funny. And if I have my set list in bullet points, then I only have to be able to segue between the bullet points to make a bit of continuity there. And I've probably done the same set several times and never told it completely the same way because I'm telling a story. I may be using slightly different words, but I'm not regurgitating verbatim something that's just rote memory. That's very stiff and it's very artificial. Um, and I don't have to memorize too much because I'm recounting stuff that I experienced. I'm just recalling a memory. And of course, I turn up the volume on the exaggeration here and there for comedy, but they have their basis in real experience for me. I mean, just pay attention to what happened in the news last year. All kinds of things were happening. California just approved the potential reuse of wastewater for eventually being purified for drinking water. That's hilarious. That's something you can talk about. I tell people
Yes.
who have been drinking Budweiser, they're already prepared to do that. They've been doing it all along. There's so much that can come from just paying attention.
It's like
So much.
if gay people drink Bud Light that's recycled, will they become straight again?
Exactly. Exactly.
You can
Yeah.
have that joke. I
Yeah.
can't get away with saying that.
Well, I just found out literally last year I just found out what a Kegel is. I'm so naive. Once I learned what it is, I said, why don't we just call it a puss up? Isn't that what it is? So there's all kinds of stuff out there, and I do have some friends in comedy who they'll sit down with a pen and paper and they will write out like one-liners, and they're very, very good at it. But that's just not the way my mind operates. I just don't operate that way.
You're bringing up some wonderful points that I want to touch on. I want to touch on rehearsing with you, and I want to touch on, I want to touch on rehearsing and practicing.
Hmm.
For instance, Steve Marshall, he's a New York legend, been around the business and been around the country doing comedy. He does comedy for peace. I really look up to him. He has taught me some of the most interesting stuff about your comedy. For one thing, he says, practice imperfectly. So when you're talking about setup, punch, word for word, verbatim kind of stuff, that's the problem with having every single word the same way every time. You're going to sound like a robot. But if you allow yourself to practice imperfectly, new stuff comes pretty soon. You're
Yeah,
freeing yourself up on stage to be imperfect, which makes you more in the moment, which makes you more engaging, which makes you more funny.
I agree. It's very it's very disarming when you come across as someone who's just another person and not someone who's artificial on a stage. And the longer I do this, the more I like places where there is no actual physical stage or one that's elevated above the crowd. I'm a very tall guy. I'm 6'7". You
Wow.
can't tell because I'm sitting down, obviously. And
Stay
during the,
seated because I'm
I
5 foot
know,
two.
I know that during the 2 years of COVID, we had people on board in the company. And once we started coming back to the building, they said, "Wow, I had no idea you were tall." I'm like, "How would you know? You always saw me sitting down. You never would know that." But anyway, I like the ones where I'm kind of like on the same level. There'll be tables and I'm standing on the same level as them. You can all reach out and touch people. Those are much more personal experiences to me. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I like Broadway Comedy Club. I like Comics Roadhouse at Mohegan Sun. I like the venues up in Portland, Maine that I've done. But the longer I do it, the more I feel actually connected. And I'm starting to prefer those smaller venues that, have a little more intimacy. It's almost like a group of friends, if you can call a group of 50 people a small group of friends. But I think it's great. But I agree with you about practicing imperfectly. Um, it reminds me this reminds me of something. Another thing I do is I'm a martial arts instructor. I teach a couple nights a week,
Now we're
and
talking. Now you're going to get into some interesting rehearsal stuff. I know you
yes,
will.
absolutely. And it's right in line with you talked about practicing imperfectly, Linda. It's a great segue because when we practice for competitions, when we're doing our forms, some styles call them katas, and they're very intricate and very involved. When you go to an external competition, if you make a mistake, you have to know how to have the composure to handle that and keep going. This is right in line with what you just said. So
Yeah.
when one of our advanced students, especially an advanced student, like one of our black belts is training and they make a mistake and they start over, I said, you need to take these opportunities to practice your composure. What if this was a competition? If you do this while you're practicing, you're going to get flustered and you're going to lose your space and you're going to be a little bit out of your element and everyone in the room is going to know it. What you do is don't even acknowledge the mistake, just keep going. Do not let it ruin you for the rest of what you're doing. And so this is why I felt compelled to say this, Linda, because what you said about practicing imperfectly, life is what happens when you're busy making other plans, right? I have this image in my mind of perfection. It's never going to go perfectly. You have to have the agility and the presence to say, no big deal. And to your point, where you started to way go at the beginning of this conversation, no one gives a shit. No one's going to remember. I'm more impressed with someone who makes a mistake and maintains their composure the rest of the way through.
Exactly. I know somebody, he will go nameless, and sent me a video. I was watching the video, and in a sentence, there are the main words that you don't want to screw up or the joke doesn't fly. Let's say he used an instead of the, or a instead of an, or whatever, some little tiny grammatical mistake. And then he made a big deal about, I mean, and it's like you're giving away your whole hand that you're verbatim,
Yes,
that everything's
yes,
memorized like clock. Don't do that.
I
If,
agree.
if you're gonna be the same exact words every time, when you
I
make a
agree.
mistake,
I
don't
agree.
point it out.
I agree. That's why I said earlier, like I've done the same set. I take great pride, and this is true. This is very true. I have never done the same set in the same location twice.
It's awesome.
Never. Because like I told you, there's so much contemporary information you can make, so every time I perform. Now, I will take a set I did at Mohegan Sun. I will do the same set somewhere else. Different crowds, right? But when I tell those sets over and over again, like I told you, I would seriously doubt if I've ever told them exactly the same way because it's not verbatim coming from my head. Plus, that gives you the ability to not be on a script and interact with the audience more, and everything you said, I could not agree more with. I think it's vital. And some of the younger guys, some of these guys who are like half my age, they go up there and they have a notepad. Now, these are not paid spots that they're getting, so I can cut them a little bit of slack. But what I try to encourage them to do is I'll say, your next step is to go out there without the notepad for a couple reasons. Number one, you didn't even look at it. It's your little binky up there. It's your little pacifier. Number two, for me, part of the thrill is working without a net. Part of the thrill is having to be on your toes, tell your stories, get your humor across, connect with the audience. And to your point, Linda, if you're reading verbatim, if you're looking down at a notebook, you're telling the whole audience that you don't have a lot of confidence in what you're doing or that you're not quite where you want to be. Fake it till you make it.
Yeah. Now, I started comedy at age 63 with
Mm-hmm.
mild dementia due to brain trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And so I took notes up there, and I had notes this big so the letters could be big
Oh,
enough so I
sure.
could read them. And even with a diagnosis and a psych file this big, nobody wanted me up there with notes. And it took me until about my sixth year until my brain started memorizing things. But the best thing that when it comes to knowing your material, somebody gave me the best two tips ever. Say it in a chronological order of how it happened. Like I was born here, raised here, started comedy, whatever. And say as much of the truth as possible.
Yes.
Then you'll have less trouble memorizing it because
Yes.
it's true.
Yeah, we keep saying the same things. It's like I said, I don't have to memorize because I'm retelling stories, my experiences. It's the same thing.
Yeah,
And
it
no,
is.
that's great. And you mentioning you had very valid reasons for having notes up there with you. I want to make sure that everybody knows there's this complete distinction there. I'm talking about guys, young, guys in their early 20s and stuff. A couple girls too. They go up there, notes, and it's almost like a teddy bear that they're holding on to just for security, and they don't need it. And I keep encouraging them, if you want to get to the next level, I don't mean level like Hollywood. I mean you on your journey. Start. I don't do a lot of open mics anymore. I'm too busy. And as you probably know, Linda, when you go to an open mic, you're usually performing in front of other comedians. So if something doesn't land with a room full of comedians, it does not mean that that is not going to land at a comedy club, right? But when I do go to open mics, I don't bring any notes up with me. I take that as a dry run for material, working without a net and being agile enough and it's almost always new material, but I don't want my notebook up there with me. I don't want to even fall into a habit of wanting to have some sort of safety net. Like I
Yeah.
said, for me, part of the adrenaline is being up there and just having the ability to not be tied down by anything. So I really like the way our two experiences, Linda, you and me, are they have a lot of parallels. I think a lot of comedians do, and there's been two or three things now we've each said the same theme differently in our experiences. So there's a lot of overlap between us, and I really appreciate that. I think it's very neat.
Yeah. So okay, so you grew up and like have you lived in the vicinity where you're at right now your entire life?
Oh, that's a great question. So I was born on a naval base on the coast of Maine. Yes.
You're a
Brunswick Naval.
Navy brat?
Well, my dad was on his way out of the Navy. We lived in Navy housing the first few years of my life. Um, but I grew up in northern New England and I went to grade school and high school in South Portland, Maine, right on Casco Bay. I did my undergraduate college at University of Maine, and I jumped around jobs and stuff like that. And I'm a middle child.
Me too.
I was 10 and a half pounds when I was born.
Wow.
I was a September baby, and my mom would always remind me, "Hey, I carried you through the heat of August." You know, um, my older brother's a year and a half older than me. My younger's a year and a half younger, so we were just kind of boom, 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 right in a row. And believe it or not, I was actually quite introverted until maybe college. I had a handful of friends, maybe four or five people I considered incredibly close. The in crowd, the popular crowd, or whoever they were called back then, I wasn't with them. And I was very introverted. I kept a lot of stuff to myself. And then apparently in college, everything came out. But I've always been told that I've had a good sense of humor, that I'm very expressive. I'm very well read. And I think that has a lot to do, especially with the contemporary, recent events kind of humor. You have to be aware of what's going on. But I
Yeah.
do a lot of pop culture references. I do some self-deprecation about, living as a tall guy. My family, my background. There's a lot. And then I've been in Killingworth. We've been in Connecticut for over 20 years. I've been here in Killingworth for about 14 or 15. And we love it here. My wife, Anne, we've been married 22 years. My daughter, Lucy, will be 14 next month. We have our little dog, Rita. Her middle name is Roomba because she vacuums everything off the floor.
What kind of dog?
She's a rescue. We got her during COVID. She was 2 when we got her. We did the doggy DNA. She's 65% pit bull, 25% lab, and 10% red coon hound.
Wow.
She's adorable. She's a real sweetheart. She really is. She's a good companion animal. But
Nice.
that's where I come from. My hobbies include obviously comedy, martial arts. I like spending time out on the water doing fishing and things like that. So I stay pretty busy. I sleep well at night. Of course, being a husband and a father and all that kind of stuff too. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
So talk to us about why, two last things we're going to talk about.
sure.
Why the Good Karma Festival? What do you hope to bring to it? What do you hope to get out of it? And then we'll do your socials so
Yeah,
people can
sure.
follow
Okay,
you.
so um on Facebook, there's a page I follow. It's called Comedy Festivals and Competitions. It's a group that communities subscribe to so we can be aware. And there's one subscriber who posts all of the open submissions every month. He's got a separate web page and he links it to Facebook. And I looked at it. I'm like, okay, well, I haven't done anything in Pennsylvania that far south towards Maryland because Hanover is practically Maryland. And I looked into it and I saw the dates. It's spread out over 7 states in, 14 days or something. And Frank has a good reputation. So I applied to it. And I'm on the 9 o'clock show on that Saturday. And there's me and two other festival entrants. And then there's a feature and a headliner. And it really appealed to me. The name kind of got me. I'll admit it. The name drew me in. Good karma, good vibes, good feeling. But what I'd like to bring to it is just my perspective. And I always love trying new places, being on new stages, performing new places, meeting new people. And there's always that, for me, there's always that adrenaline spike in the minutes leading up to going on stage and being out there. And then, as you know, it's over in a flash. It's just done so quickly. Even if I do a 20 or 30-minute set somewhere, it's over so quickly. And then I'm back home in my bed saying, "What just happened? How did I get here?" The buildup is so exciting. But for me, the drive down there, the hotel, the meals, the show, the drive back home, the whole process is enjoyable for me because it has a very good purpose. That's to bring laughter to a new crowd, to laugh at other comedians I haven't necessarily met yet. And just, honestly, some FaceTime with new people, network. I do organize some shows up here, some benefits once in a while. You never know when I may find someone I want to ask them to come up here. So that's a great question, and I'm really looking forward to it. I can't believe it's only about 5 weeks away. It's really creeping up quickly here.
How many minutes are you going to do?
Festival entrants are given 10 minutes.
It's a good amount of time.
It's a great amount of time because some festivals only give you, 5 or 6 or something. So I look forward to it. It'll be like Mark's greatest hits, the stuff that I know typically works well for me, but I also leave a little buffer to interact with the audience. I've seen images on Google of it, and they actually have pews in the room, just like a church. It's fantastic. Hashtag not a real church. That's our hashtag.
I've seen pictures of that club. It intrigued me because of its name. I'm like, what is this about?
Yeah. Yeah, and they actually have it. They have a set of commandments too, like thou shalt laugh, thou shalt turn off your cell phone, that kind of thing. It's great.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Okay, now we're down to the wire here. Tell me all your socials: Facebook,
Facebook is
Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. We got to hear them all.
okay. So Facebook is Mark Dysinger. Yep. Instagram is Giggles with Mark Dysinger. That's all lowercase. It's giggles underscore with underscore Mark Dysinger, one word. I am on Vimeo. Vimeo, just search my name, Mark Dysinger. I am not on TikTok. I have my own website. It's www.mark-dysinger-comedy.com. That has tons of information on there. It has Vimeo clips. It has, picture archive. It has all my contact information. It's my list of my upcoming shows that I have to constantly update, which is something I don't mind doing. But so Facebook, Instagram, and mark-dysinger-comedy.com.
And do you have a YouTube?
I don't have a YouTube. I have it on Vimeo.
No problem. I get you. All right. Well, can people join your Vimeo? How does that work?
Yes, they can. They subscribe to it. They can
Okay.
subscribe to the channel. That's correct.
Do you have to be a member of Vimeo to subscribe to your Vimeo?
No, you do not.
Okay, I'll go subscribe.
Great.
Fabulous.
Great.
So your Vimeo is called,
It's just my name. Got to do search for my name, Mark Dysinger, and it'll come up.
got it.
Yep.
I'll go on there. So this is being posted to my YouTube, which is comedian Linda Marcus Smith right now. And I'll share it with you if you'll share it and
I
subscribe to
will.
mine, and I'll subscribe to yours.
Excellent. I'll share it and it'll get a lot of notoriety. And I will share it to Facebook. I'll share it to everything I have. I'll get a lot of hits. You'll get a lot of exposure from this. As I suppose I will too. But thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time and all my best to you in the Good Karma Festival. What's the date at 9 p.m. at the Church of Satan?
Not the Church of Satan, the Church of Satire. The Church of Satan would be a much different show.
I was close. Church of
It's
Satire.
February 24th, 9 p.m. at the Church of Satire in Hanover, Pennsylvania.
Satire. I like satire so much better than Satan.
Yeah, but you've given
Satan,
me some ideas now. I might have a goat slaying or something.
this old lady thought it was the Church of Satan.
Well,
Leave it to a boomer.
well, thank you again, and I hope at some time our points craft across, and I can give you a big hug for all of this.
Absolutely.
All
Yeah.
right,
Like I said, I'll be in New York pretty soon. You'll hear about
thank you.
it. Okay. Bye.